All right, so let's now bring in a senior training coordinator and researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, Willem Els, to weigh in on the situation on the ground there. Willem, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time. So, in the last police stats, I mean, there were some noted improvements in the fight against crime. To what extent do you think public and private partnerships help in the fight against crime, especially when you look at gang-related crimes and murder in the Western Cape?
Good afternoon to you, Nati. Yes, indeed. You know, if you look at the stats, there was in some of the incidents or instances there was some decrease of a few percent here and there. But you know, if your crime rates are so high, you know that really doesn't really matter because crime is still too high, and we see that the police is currently overwhelmed with the crime wave that is sweeping over South Africa, and that is why we welcome this initiative by the Western Cape government. But also we can see that that stems from the strategy that was made available or that was promulgated by the Minister of Police, where one of the fields or areas of importance that is looking at to fight crime is the partnership between not only the public sector and the private sector, but also in the public sector itself. You bring all the different departments together because the police itself cannot fight this fight alone. You have to have all the departments that are actually providing with services, etc., etc. You know, those who are involved in providing jobs, for instance, and creating jobs, and those who are, you know, your social side of the economy and the landscape. The police doesn't have control over that, and those people will be coming on board along with your private sector, and I think that is only a step in the right direction.
What would those, successful partnerships look like, especially when you look at extortion? I want to just speak and stay with that because the Premier also mentioned that, in areas like infrastructure, as an example, even in the taxi industry that he's spoken about, how then, can those interventions help with that kind of crime?
Well, we saw a drain brain from the police, especially in your intelligence sector. Now, for years, the intelligence was seen as the state as being the custodian, the police, and your intelligence services. But we also know that your private sectors, because of their work and because of the development in South Africa, they also started to gather their own intelligence or their own information. They got a lot of information that can be transformed into and converted into intelligence, and that can add to the intelligence pool of the police that will actually bolster and strengthen their intelligence capability. And that is where it starts, because then they can do proactive as well as reactive operations. So intelligence is one point. Another point where we really have a severe lack of manpower and also experience and expertise is in your investigation side. Now we know that private sector, especially your banks, your insurance companies, they invested over the past few years heavily into investigation of these cases, and then they hand these prepared dockets to the police. They assist the police a lot. So what we see there is that they take more hands, and even we can look at a mentorship where a lot of your experienced detectives have left the police and they are working in the private sector, how they can come together to start to mentor these young and more inexperienced detectives in order to build strong cases, because that is where your success is being evaluated, and that is when it can go to court and they can actually probably have a successful prosecution.
And why do you think we are seeing inconsistencies in the fight against crime? Because on the one end, you see high-profile cases being heavily prioritized, and we see the good work being done there, where within days, suspects are apprehended, and in fact, we can see successful convictions there. Where do you think the problem lies, particularly as it relates to consistencies within the police force? And I'm talking broadly here across the board.
Yeah, Nati, I see, unfortunately so, because of the lack of resources, the lack of experience, manpower, etc., the police is really fighting an uphill battle. So what happens with these high-profile cases is they come together and they bring together a task team, a multidisciplinary task team. We have highly experienced people. They also make sure that these task teams have all the resources they need in order to investigate this case. And that is why it is more successful than your everyday cases. We must just understand, for instance, for robberies, the detection rate for robberies in South Africa is just about 10%. That means is from that person has been arrested, the case investigated, going to court, and that person has been convicted. So that is not a deterrence. It doesn't serve as a deterrence for these criminals. So if we can up that by this new initiative, it will go a long way to minimize the crime in South Africa.
And let's look at another concern, and that is, of course, the trust deficit among community members and your police, services. How can police officers gain more trust within communities to ensure proactiveness, firstly, and of course effective policing? I mean, we've seen it work in some communities over others.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in South Africa, according to the latest statistics available, about 27% of the public has got trust in the police. So that is very low. And of course, the police would like to change that. And I think that one of the major challenges that the police have is corruption, endemic corruption within the police, and also the perception of corruption that is with the public of the police. So if the police can work out a strategy to effectively combat that perception, but also combat corruption within their ranks, is going to go a long way to actually sort out this problem. But also, it comes to service delivery and competence. If the police come with service delivery and competence, they start to solve cases, they are actively working with the community, it will also a long way to actually swing perception of the public.
All right, Willem, thank you so much for your time. Let's leave it there for now. Senior Training Coordinator and researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, Willem Els, just weighing in on those public and private partnerships that we are seeing in the Western Cape.